Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a renowned corporate trainer, an engaging public speaker, an integrative emotional intelligence specialist, holds a Master Practitioner certification in NLP. She has conducted thousands of individual client sessions and more than 85 noteworthy presentations and trainings. Noteworthy clients include JP Morgan Chase, Target, Kemp's, governments, and private organizations. She's also the visionary behind AHARA Club, a transformative community that embodies her philosophy of higher awareness and realization of our abilities. So a very, 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 very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Roberta Fernandez. How are you, Roberta?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thanks for having me today.
So we've just had an amazing conversation. I should have hit the record button. Everybody could have got like an additional 15 minutes of wonderful conversation. So, but yeah, so that means we should have another conversation after this.
I'm up for it.
Okay. So really excited to have this conversation with you because the bio that I read out was a very condensed version of you, what you've done, and how you support people globally with the different techniques that you harnessed and perfected over the years. But I'm really keen to have a conversation with you about the subject today, but definitely there are other things that we won't be able to cover today. So hopefully we can schedule another discussion for a later date. But today we're going to look at peak performance, your ultimate guide. And I love the idea of peak performance because I love the idea that we're all capable of achieving wonderful things, whatever peak performance looks like for us. And I definitely, you're the expert on this, but I definitely feel that there's, I don't know, this, not fear, but we don't think maybe certain performance to us or certain goals are achievable. So it's maybe kind of easier not to even attempt to achieve some of those things that we want. But I'm hoping with some of the tools and techniques that you've got at your disposal that we'll talk about today, that potentially some of those things will be achievable and there'll be lots of insights for people listening and watching.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talked to me about the title of this. It was a title I hadn't thought of, but when you sent it to me, I really did think about how fitting it is to what I do. Because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since my 20s, which is a long time now. I'm getting up there in years. And I'm in that last third of my life, and I'm looking for, what kind of legacy am I going to leave here in this planet, right? What am I going to do here? And when I look back at all the things that I've done, because my nature, I think if you are an entrepreneur, you have this propensity for risk. You're willing to take a risk. It does get more challenging as you get older, but you just say yes to everything and figure out how to get it done later. And I love new challenges. And so as a personal and professional development consultant now, I have taken all of the things that I've done in the past and kind of brought them into this package, which is AHARA, because it's all kind of led me to this place. And when I thought about your title for this, I thought how perfect this is, because it really speaks to how we don't recognize our own potential. And during COVID, when I started creating AHARA, so this has been 3 years in the making, this process that I have, that's based on, 40 years of experience, I really felt like the thing that holds people back is very personal. It stems from imposter syndrome, from myths that we carry throughout our whole life. And it also stems from complacency, because a lot of times I'll hear people say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And, I get that a lot from salespeople, for example.
Mm.
They'll say, what I'm doing is working. And I'm like, great, that's wonderful that it's working for you. My question to you is, how do you know there's not so much more potential? Because we tend to get complacent when things are good. We don't want to rock the boat. And then when things get tough, or we have a failure, or we're presented with something like COVID, this big adversity comes into our lives, we don't really know how to pivot, and we don't really know how to
Yeah.
dig deep inside of ourselves and figure out how we're going to overcome the situation. So I think, peak performance, even though that may not be quite how I would frame it, it really is true. I look at what is your full potential? And in order to reach that, AHARA stands for a higher awareness and realization of your abilities. And you can't really fully realize your abilities until you understand who you are
Mm.
and what is making you successful and what's holding you back.
So lots of questions spring to mind.
Yeah.
One of which I'd like to, well, I'm intrigued by everything you just said. I'm particularly intrigued by how you arrived at this place where you are so perceptive about our abilities, and maybe the fact that we don't understand or we're not aware that there is more to meet the eye in terms of who we are and what we're capable of.
So I'll just give you a little history. So years ago, I was working as a corporate trainer and consultant in the field of sustainability when sustainability was kind of a hard sell. And so a lot of going in and talking to major companies about being more sustainable, and not just environmentally, but economically and socially, and taking care of their employees, et cetera. There was a lot of pushback, a lot. And so my job became really one of trying to change culture, because and what I realized, what I was fortunate enough to realize very early in that career, was that it's really hard to change a corporate culture until the people in it change. And I stayed in that field for around 7 years. And then I became a hypnotist. And people thought that is, a total 180. That, like, how
Mm.
did this happen? But hypnosis was really just a tool. And that phase for 12 years of my life was the perfect opportunity for me to delve into change and perception, which is the same issues that I dealt with on the corporate sector. Just as a hypnotist, I was dealing with it individually, one
Mm.
on one. And I was doing the same thing. I'm helping a company change, I'm helping a person change. So hypnosis was just a tool to do that. But after thousands of sessions with clients, what I realized is that the first step in change is really getting to understand who you are. And when it comes to your professional life, that involves, how much risk am I willing to take? What am I looking for in life? What kind of employer do I want to work for? Or do I want to do my own thing?
Mm.
And so this idea of self-awareness is really pivotal, I found, in people's success. And in doing hypnosis, it gave me the opportunity to delve into people's belief systems, the rules they have about life, the rules and the beliefs they were given to them by other people that really aren't theirs.
Mm.
So it's this intense opportunity for self-exploration and the opportunity to get rid of all that stuff that doesn't serve you. So I talk a lot now in companies on imposter syndrome and all these myths that we carry, that we're not good enough or that external conditions control us. The fact of the matter is, emotion drives behavior.
Yeah.
And so, and it is critical to understand that. personally and professionally. And all of these things are tied together. You know, when I was younger, there used to be this unspoken rule, or sometimes spoken, leave your stuff at the door, don't bring it into the office. Well, that's ridiculous. If your home life is a mess, it's really hard to compartmentalize to the greatest degree that you're going to perform at peak performance at the office. And so this idea that we can separate our personal and professional life is harmful, because it leaves people very frustrated when they figure out they can't really do that. And it limits us, and it makes us do double work, because a lot of things like within AHARA, you know, we talk on a personal level, but we want to translate that. It's not like we want to be two different people. You know, you may act a little differently at home than in the office, but you are who you are. And the things and the techniques that you use in your personal life can carry over into your professional life and vice versa. And when we try to bifurcate them, when we try to separate them so much, we end up doing twice as much work.
Yeah.
So this idea of becoming aware of ourselves and other people and how they're processing and what their perspectives are is really the first step in becoming and reaching your full potential.
Mm. It must be fascinating when you're working with clients and you're seeing, I guess, principally some acknowledgement that maybe their awareness or their self-awareness maybe was kind of skewed, and then you're kind of bringing them back, you're centering them back to what self-awareness looks like for them.
Mhm.
So just in terms of that self-awareness, how do we know that our self-awareness is in line with who we are and what maybe our goals are? I'm not sure if I've answered that in the best way. I'm hoping you'll be able to interpret what I'm trying to say.
I do know what you're trying to say. And it's really interesting because um, as a hypnotist, when I was just strictly doing that, which by the way, I still use I use some hypnotic tools, but I'm not so much practicing as a hypnotist anymore. But it gave me so much insight. And I used to tell people, because they'd come to me for lots of reasons, right? Whether they wanted to lose weight, or they had relationship issues, or they wanted to stop smoking, or maybe they were gambling, whatever. I always said to them, everybody comes to me for one reason and one reason only. And this applies to our conversation. They came to me because there's something that they consciously want, but their subconscious mind doesn't believe it's possible.
Mm,
This is true. So it's that disconnect. And typically, what's at the root of that is an outdated belief system.
yeah,
And a lot of times, we're not even aware of what that is. And so there's lots of ways to get to that. That's, you know, way over the point of the show. But um, when we start really internalizing, we start looking at ourselves about how we think, and this is at the crux of AHARA. You know, Einstein said, we can't solve today's problems with the same thinking that got us there.
yeah,
And I look at the world and all the problems we have, and we're not making much progress.
mm,
And the reason is because we're using outdated thinking. And the world has really changed in the last 50 years. But we're still thinking like we did 250 years ago, right? So we have to really look at what are our thoughts. We're not really aware of what we
mm,
think day in and day out. We're not really aware of our feelings at any given time during the course of the day. And if we can't be self-aware that way, if we don't even know where we are, how can we ever expect to have successful relationships and professional relationships with other people and deal with everyone else's perspectives if we're not even aware
yeah,
of our own, right? So
mm,
it all does start personally with examining that and then seeing how you fit in to the world, and being more open and aware in the world so that you can function better in it.
yeah.
Because really, we're probably only aware of about 25% of the opportunities that are out there. We're blind
Wow.
to the rest of it. And so when we can we really understand ourselves, and we can understand how other people think. I mean, today, it's not just here in the United States, it's the world. We're very divided
Mm.
in a way that we've not been in the past. And you see that carrying over into business too, not just politics. But we really need to understand what our own perspectives are, what our own needs are, and be clear. And then be able, this is the emotional intelligence piece, be able to be in this sea of perspectives that we live in and to function at our full potential. And most people are not doing that today.
Yeah. There's a couple of things spring to mind, and it's around that clarity of thought where
Mhm.
we can actually think, and it's actually us. There was, I forget who said it, but I heard recently, and I'd love to get your thoughts. And I think you kind of answered the question, but it'd be lovely to reference you anyway. But a guy mentioned that for him, he used meditation because that was, I guess, that was his own moments where his thoughts were not where he. Sorry, it was that one moment where he knew, well, he could trust that his thoughts were not everybody else's thoughts, because he's around television, people, social media. Whenever he's thinking, well, I'm just thinking based on what I've just read and what somebody else has just told me, what I've heard on the tube, what I've heard on the subway. So yeah, but I'd love to get your vantage point on that.
I think that's absolutely true. And we are bombarded, day in and day out. It's 24/7 now,
Mm,
between newscasts, between social media, and the demands that are put on us at work. I know in the UK it's a little bit different, the
mm,
work environment, but it's stressful. I mean, there's a lot asked of everybody today. And so many people are not taking time for themselves. I know, I have an app that's called Conscious Napping, and it's just guided visualization stuff. And most of the recordings are like 7 minutes. And I've had people say to me, I just don't have time for that. And it's like, really? 7 minutes
yeah.
is all, if you can't ask of yourself to close everything else off and just listen to something, you
Mm,
don't even have to do anything, you just have to listen, and block everything out, then there's a much deeper problem here at play. But the point is that we all should be taking at least 15 to 20 minutes a day and just letting our minds rest. That's why I call it conscious napping,
yeah.
because our conscious mind needs to take a break every once in a while. Doesn't mean we're going to sleep. It's kind of a play on words, but like your title of your podcast, My Perfect Failure, right?
Mm,
We have to take that time for ourselves, because when we are continually functioning under stress, which is what is happening when we are jacked up, being bombarded by everything, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, I always get that pronounced wrong, sorry about that. These stress chemicals are flooding our body and they're making us sick.
yeah.
And that's just a scientific fact. When we can just turn that off and tap into that part of uh, producing endorphins and serotonin and melatonin and all the things that make us feel better, and you can do that simply with a breath,
Mm,
just relaxing 5 breaths in a row where you're breathing with your diaphragm. It stimulates the nerve in your body called the vagus nerve
yeah.
that will help bring your body back into homeostasis. It doesn't take but a minute to do that. And so there's so many simple techniques that people can use to center themselves. You don't need to spend an hour a day in meditation. I mean, if you have that time and that luxury and you can do that, that's awesome. But, for me, when I taught people how to do self-hypnosis, just take 2 minutes. I mean, just giving your mind a break for that and being intentional is priceless for your
Yeah.
mind and body.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think allowing ourselves to do that. When you look at really successful people, they all have time during their day. They usually start their day with some kind of self
Yeah.
introspection
Yeah.
or meditation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they all do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really, I guess, interesting and concerning that, I guess, what we're covering at the moment, that we can say very, very easily, without even thinking that we're too busy, to actually look at some form of self-care where we're giving our brain and our minds a break from the chaos that surrounds us. And I was talking to somebody today actually, and we were talking about the idea that it's quite logical to go to the gym and take care of ourselves physically, but the idea, to your point, where we actually want to take care of ourselves from a mental perspective.
Yep.
For a lot of us, we can just say I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. Without even really thinking what the benefit, why we should do it, and what the benefits are.
Yep. There you go back to your point. We don't think. We are not thinking about things in the way we should.
Yeah.
One of the things that has been shown to me throughout my whole life is that our thoughts are like a boomerang. What you throw out, you get right back.
Mm.
And what you focus on expands. And so, if I wake up grumpy and I go out and I'm grumpy, I'm going to meet a lot of grumpy people that day. Call it the law of attraction, call it whatever you want to call it. That is the way it works.
Yeah.
You get what you sow. And so, for example, in AHARA, my point is that when you stop concentrating on what was and what is, then you can acquire the skills to focus on what you want to be. So it is about mindfulness. It's about being present, being aware of what your thoughts are and your feelings. And a lot of times that's where the disconnect is that I mentioned earlier,
Mm.
that what you're thinking and you're feeling are not congruent. That can be very problematic. That shows where there's that disconnect there. And here's the other thing too. It applies to problem solving. All the things that I'm talking about. As long as we are in the problem, it goes back to what Einstein said. We need a different level of thinking than what we use to create the problem.
Yeah.
Because when we're mired in the problem,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can never see the solution, right?
Mm.
So, and here's the thing I feel about solutions. Everything that we want, I don't care if it's a car or a house or a promotion, doesn't matter. Everything that we want is because we think we'll feel better when we have it.
Mm.
And so how we feel about things is really important. So let's just talk about my perfect failure. You've had a failure. Obviously, the title lends itself to say, what can I learn from that?
Mm.
How can I grow from that? How can I not repeat that again? How can I pull myself up and get back on the horse and start riding it, right? So um, if we focus on how we want to feel, we may not know what the solution is yet, but if we focus on how we want to feel, it will lead us to the solution because emotions drive all behavior. And when you can put yourself in this really good feeling place, like I don't really know, I've had many AHARA clients that they don't really know what they want to do. They'll come to me and say, I hate my job. I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't know what I want to
Yeah.
do. I ask them to focus on how they want to feel. And they can imagine that. They can close their eyes and they can visualize how they look, how they feel. They may not know what they're doing, but that's okay. That's a big first step because then we work it backwards. And then we've shifted the focus onto something positive rather than they hate where they are right now.
Okay. Okay. So that's really interesting. And for people listening, because I definitely think that I don't know this, but I'm just going to throw a random statement out there. But I think there's almost an epidemic where many of us have some area of discomfort. It could be with work, it could be relationships. Hopefully, there are a number of people that this doesn't apply to. They're perfectly happy. But either we accept it or we don't want to confront it because we just don't know what, we don't know where to start with it. So, and this might lead us to a horror. But so for people listening, watching that can identify with the fact that I do feel a sense of discomfort. I don't feel that I'm in line with my work or whatever it is at the moment. What's the best way for them to approach that with a horror?
Well, with AHARA, we dig into that deep. And with AHARA, it's kind of two-pronged. I do individual work with the client. with most of the clients. Not everybody does this that goes into AHARA, but I highly suggest it because you want to start with a clean slate. You want to get rid of all the limiting beliefs that you carry, all the things that don't serve you anymore. And, that's very important to get to understand yourself. I call it cleaning out your closet.
Mm.
And it's just a way of understanding yourself and knowing yourself in a different way. A lot of times people that go through that part of the process will say, wow, now I know when this happens, I always react this way. Because it's some kind of belief or rule we've set for ourselves at one time in our life that isn't serving us anymore. And a lot of times people aren't even aware what that is. So usually AHARA starts with that kind of thing. If it doesn't, we always do a lot of visualization around limiting beliefs. Like I will ask the client, what's your thing that you think holds you back the most? And then I'll take them through a visualization. But honestly, for people, everybody can do this. In our pre-conversation, I asked you about the title of your podcast.
Mm.
You described how when you weren't thinking about it, you were busy going somewhere in
Mm.
London, it just came to you,
Mm.
right? This is how our subconscious mind works. We have all the answers inside of us. We just consciously cannot access them. And so part of it is just setting an intention consciously. This is what I'd like to accomplish. This is how I want to feel when I get there. And being silent with that, just kind of going into ourselves and just being in a quiet room or taking a walk in nature. I mean, being outdoors and, not thinking about our normal daily things is really helpful for 10 or 15 minutes and then letting it go.
Mm.
Because the other part of it is a lot of us try too hard,
Yeah.
and we don't need to. We have that wisdom inside of us. We have our answers, the things that are going to work for us.
Mm.
And so we just have to be quiet to let it come. And that is the way the subconscious mind works. A lot of times it happens through our body. My guess is when you came up with that perfect failure title, there was an emotion that came with that too. There was a
Mm. Yeah,
good
big time.
feeling that
Yeah,
came.
definitely.
Yeah,
It felt, there was almost like an adrenaline rush. There was a sense of,
yes,
this is the title. I knew it was the title.
yep. And here's why that happens. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. As a hypnotist, I had to learn a lot about how the mind works, the conscious, the subconscious, the unconscious mind. And there's no direct communication between the subconscious mind and our conscious mind. It communicates. Our subconscious mind is where our beliefs about life are, all of our long-term memories, our emotions, all of it's there, the really deep stuff that drives us. The conscious mind really isn't aware of a lot of that. It communicates through the body. So, for example, that good feeling you had was some relief, it was joy, it
Mm.
was whatever it felt like to you. Gosh, I finally got it. And you felt that in your body. You may not have paid attention to it, but you do feel it in your body. All emotion expresses through the body. When we're sad, we cry. That's how the tears typically are how our conscious mind knows that the emotion that's been created subconsciously is sadness. If we're afraid, the hair might go up on the back of our neck or our heart might start racing a little bit. Our subconscious mind has a way of communicating through the body.
Mm.
And so being self-aware is that's part of that self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
Um, not trying too hard. Sometimes the things that we ask of ourselves are complicated. We're not going to get the answer right away. It's kind of like our brain is trying to figure it out. And it's doing that by drawing from all of our past experiences and our knowledge and our memories, everything that we have stored. And so sometimes it might come instantly, sometimes it might take a day or two. But boy, if you are quiet, and you just let it happen, it comes to you. It always
Mm.
does.
Yeah.
Always does.
Can I ask a question around that? So when I set the intention, so I hadn't spoken to you, so
Mhm.
I couldn't be coached to set the intention. because I guess I had a purpose that I wanted to achieve, I
Yeah.
I did it almost out of, it just happened, but it wasn't, I wasn't taught and I wasn't educated around it. So now, if I want to set an intention now,
Mhm.
the different things I want to achieve, when I'm setting an intention, so that because I now I know what you were telling me, what I'm learning, I want that intention to stick. So is it about finding those quiet moments and thinking, should I be journaling? Are there things that I can do to kind of really set the intention so it sticks?
Mhm. So it's different for everybody. For example, I'm not a journaler.
Mm,
And again, all of this takes practice. The subconscious mind learns through repetition. It's a
okay.
very, it involves very old parts of our brain, and it learns best through repetition. Our conscious
Mm,
mind hates that; it gets bored very quickly. But so I encourage people to set an intention every day, and it doesn't have to be major. Like start with the easy stuff,
mm,
so you can see some results,
yeah.
right? So, your intention might be, you know what, I'm going to try to be in a good mood all day today, right? Something simple that you can
Mm,
accomplish, right? And then work up to the harder stuff. But being really intentional means stating what you want, but not just the what, but the why,
okay.
and how am I going to feel when that intention comes to fruition, right?
Is that a bit
It,
of
it, it's a
visualization there as
multi.
well?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Visualization is really important.
Mm,
And that is powerful. It is
mm,
very, very powerful tool. Athletes, world-class athletes,
mm,
they do visualization all the time. They imagine their move in their sport. Like I worked with a pole vaulter,
mm,
fascinating. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun to work with him. Um, Visualizing where his hands are on the pole, how his feet are moving, the pace, how he's picking up, and how his body feels when it goes and defies gravity,
mm.
right? And goes over the top of that pole. Like every little detail they visualize perfectly
Yeah.
because the body has muscle memory, number one. And here's what science has told us. The brain can't tell the difference between what's real
Mm,
and what's vividly imagined.
yeah.
And there are hundreds of experiments out there that prove that to be true.
Mm,
And when you look at robotics, how they're reverse engineering things in the body, we know that's how the brain
yeah.
works. So visualization is really important. And when you combine visualization with emotion, it's like how you want to feel, it's really important. So with AHARA, we start becoming very self-aware.
Mm,
I have people do, and this would be a challenge to your audience. It sounds really easy, is very hard. So I give them, my students, the challenge to set an alarm randomly every hour during the day. So maybe it's 10 after 9 and then it's 11:30, whatever, just a random alarm once an hour. And when it goes off, in that instant, write down what you're thinking and what you're feeling. It is really hard. And it proves the point of how unaware we are throughout the course of our day. Most of our actions are habituated. And the reason, again, is based in science. It is our brain has, oh my God, 100 million neurons, and at any one time they're connecting with 5,000 others. It needs to automate everything to be efficient and to have the energy to get you through the day. So much of our thoughts, our actions, how we go through our day to day and function, you don't think about picking up your phone. You don't think about putting your pants on. You just put them on. You don't think about
mm,
tying your shoes anymore. You don't think about brushing your teeth, really. It's all automated.
mm,
And so what happens in that automation is that we lose self-awareness. We lose track of what we're thinking because our brain is so amazing that half the time we don't have to think about
yeah.
something.
Okay.
Make
So that's,
sense?
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. So to get what we want and to achieve the performances that we want, and the performance can be anything. It can be a better husband, it can be better work
Yep.
colleague, it can be a better citizen.
Yep.
is becoming aware part of that process where we're able, what goes into that part in terms of making those little adjustments that are really gonna set us apart and make us better in whatever area that is point of focus for us.
Well, I think the first step is realizing it's not going to happen overnight.
Okay.
AHARA is a year-long process.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Because here's what I know, as again, building on my whole career, um, in 12 years as a hypnotist, certain things can change overnight. That's one-on-one work. It's intense, but it can happen if you're really dedicated. But most people have lifelong habits. Most people have
Yeah.
spent most of their life unaware.
Mm.
And so, you know, it takes time to start looking and thinking differently. And so with AHARA, it's designed to introduce new ideas. So I'll give you an example. Either or thinking. This is the way we have thought for millennia. It's black or it's white. It's right or it's wrong. There's no shades of gray. And many, many people think that way. The problem with thinking that way is it really limits our possibilities. When we only see one way or the other, there's lots of area in between or on the outskirts, right, that we're not going to be open to because we only have two choices. So it's really limiting how we're thinking, which therefore is going to limit our success. It's that salesperson again that I mentioned earlier that says, look, I meet my quotas every month. What I'm doing is working for me. And you know what? That's fine. If that is all you want, perfect. And that's working for you. It obviously is a personal decision. But I would question, how do you know that you couldn't do 2 or 3 times more than that? How do you know what your real potential is if you stay closed in that little box? And that's what we do to ourselves by either or thinking. So what I challenge people to do is to recognize either or thinking when you see it, because it's everywhere. And then ask yourself, how can I change that thinking to both and?
Okay.
How can I get my cake and eat it too, right? In a way. Most people will push back and say, oh, well, let's just take a soccer game, right? A football game in the UK. How can we, it's win or lose. One team wins, one team loses. It's true. That is either or thinking is everywhere around us. But it doesn't mean that you can't both and it. So if I'm the loser in that game, I can go back to the room, watch the film, and look at, here's a way to both and it. I could have done this and improve that situation. Even the winner of that game can say, how do we build on that win? What can we do to make this work for everybody? A team is a great way to look at this. You might have a star player that does very, very well. But if you both anded it rather than said, oh, we're either going to go to him or we're going to go to him, right? If you both and it, how can we involve 2 players in that to make it even better?
Yeah. And that
You see what I'm saying?
that kind of really mirrors the title of this podcast. We are making those improvements because we're recognizing that if it didn't go according to plan, if we didn't achieve whatever we positioned as the ultimate outcome, actually we can go back, revisit, and actually fine tune because there's things there for us to work on. It's almost my perfect failure. It's that idea that there is opportunity even when we don't think there is. And I think that you mentioned you work with athletes. I think the top athletes have got that ability to know that there's always an opportunity to be gleaned from those difficult moments.
Right. But it is even more than that. So when you get this, when you think about this concept of both and, let's say you're in a work scenario and there's contention, like there's 2 parties not agreeing on something, right? It's very natural for us to want to just object and say, but you know,
Yeah.
but closes everything down and negates everything that comes before that sentence. I took improv classes for about 9 months many years ago. It was really fun. I was really bad at it, but it was fun and I learned a lot. And one of the key concepts behind improv that is successful is that you always have to leave room for an and. Because if you don't say yes and, the scene stops. You know, people are there just doing what's coming out of their head. And if you put in a but, or you say something that has nowhere else to go from there, the scene ends.
Okay.
You have to start and do something different. And so thinking about this both and concept in the terms of conflict, when you go into that scenario, you listen to what the other person is saying, and even just a simple word repeating what they said, so you know that you've been listening, they know you've been listening, and saying but just says, "Oh, I don't like anything else you said,"
Mm.
and it's going to make the other person defensive. But if you use the word and, the subconscious mind hears that very different.
Okay.
And it allows you then to say, hey, here's another way of looking at this, rather than saying, I don't like what you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
there's so many simple ways. And these are the things that we explore in AHARA. And then I give the students assignments to actually practice it
Mm.
so that when we come back together in a couple of weeks, we can share stories of our successes or failures,
Mm.
right? And so it is a year of developing, learning new ways of thinking and stretching ourselves and then implementing them and integrating them so they become our way of being.
Mm.
And
Mm.
we gradually shift our our way of thinking over time.
So sounds amazing. And in terms of the clients you work with, so I've read out in your bio that you've worked with some amazing clients and different
Mhm.
people and so forth. So when you work with, I guess, a business or people within a business, are you using AHARA for some of those guys as well?
Oh yeah. So there's a couple of ways I deliver AHARA. It can be done one-on-one.
Mm.
It's very intense and it's very expensive because it's a lot of hours
Mm.
face to face with a client. I offer AHARA Club, which is the year-long process, which I really like
Mm.
because it gives us time and it's very interactive. I have a wonderful platform that I deliver that tool with, where we have discussions and challenges, and we meet a couple of times a month together as a group. We meet for an hour individually. So there's a lot of hand holding through it too, and learning from each other. But I also deliver it within a company and it's a AHARA team. So for example, a company might want to have their marketing team or their
Yeah.
C-suite, because then what happens is it provides a common language and approach to ways of doing things. And it can be then very focused on that person. With athletes, I only do AHARA with semi-pro or pro athletes. And it really is very much geared toward their sport. But it is also about, how do I put myself in the position, because I am in a place where I can affect change,
Mm.
where I can be a role model to younger people, perhaps. How do I want to model this new way of thinking and
Oh,
being in the world, right? So, I look for AHARA. AHARA is not for everybody. It really is for forward thinkers. People that obviously want to make more money and be more successful,
yeah.
people who want to feel more confident in their own decision making, people who want to get recognition. That's very important to some people. And but it does stretch you.
Mm.
It isn't the normal way of thinking because it's designed not to be.
Mm.
So I put out challenging thoughts and ideas, and then ask people to go out and use them and bring back feedback
Yeah.
so that we can all learn from it, right?
Mm. Which to me is challenging, sometimes gives us a little bit of anxiety. But if we want to be, to your point, forward thinking and become that better version of ourselves, then we can't do it by not doing anything. We have to we have to engage and we have to ask ourselves questions that we potentially have never asked ourselves before.
Yep. You know, it's interesting, Paul, because one thing I always told people when I was practicing hypnosis full time, it I would say, unless someone was referred to me by someone who I'd already worked with and shared their success, 100% of the people that walked in my door didn't think it was going to work.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a prerequisite. The prerequisite for me working with someone was, do you really want the change?
Mm,
And that seems like a silly question, but it's an important question. You have to want change. You have to want to be different. And AHARA is, and that is one of the reasons why it's not for everybody, because some people are very content with the status quo.
mm,
And that's wonderful. If whatever you're doing is working for you, great.
mm,
This is for somebody who really wants to be different. I mentioned to you earlier that I was in the last third of my life and looking for what's my legacy going to be, right? I look at this world and like I said, there's a lot of problems and we're just not coming up with solutions because the way we've been approaching them is not working. I worked with a very prestigious client and when I finished AHARA, I called him and I said, I really think your C-suite, your company should do this, your leadership should do this. And, you know, it was the same old corporate story.
mm,
It was, well, you know, we're getting ready for layoffs. Things aren't really good. We're gonna lay off like 600 people. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the same old thing. You know, you keep doing this. You lay people off, then things pick up again. All those really good people you let go are gone. Now you got you got a bad reputation in the meantime. When are you going to start thinking differently? When are you going to look for a new solution? Because this is the same old repetitive thing that's been done over decades. And so this is what I teach people, whether they're high-level corporate people or they're entrepreneurs. I mean, entrepreneurs, I mean, I am one. I
mm,
have been my whole life. I've been blessed to work both sides of the coin in the corporate sector but a lot of people that take AHARA are smaller business people that want to do better
mm,
and they want to, they're visionaries, right? I mean, most entrepreneurs have a good idea, but maybe they could be more aware. They
mm,
could be more receptive to how they can take whatever product or service they're selling and relate to their client in a more effective way, or to draw clients in from other areas they hadn't imagined before because they weren't open to the sea of possibilities.
Can I ask you a
So,
question around that?
yeah.
So, just around, you mentioned that there were people that move forward with a
Mhm.
with a HARA or other things, and there are people that won't.
Yep.
So, is there does fear or limit, limiting beliefs, is that a common denominator between people that either don't move forward or do move forward?
It is a common denominator, and I don't care if you are an individual solopreneur or you're the CEO of a major corporation. We all have times when we doubt our abilities. I like to refer to it as imposter syndrome.
Mm,
People are going to find out I'm in over my head. I'm a fraud. I'm going to offer your listeners a free webinar that I did on imposter syndrome where I share my own limiting beliefs that I carried for a lot of my life. And we all do. We all feel that we don't have control over our situation. And yeah, I can't control a war in some part of the world. There's a lot I cannot control, but I can control how I think and how I feel about
mm,
things. And when again, I feel like a broken record here, but it's so true, that changes your reality.
mm.
If I, so I'll pose this question to you. Have you ever gotten up and you've looked at your day and you know what's ahead and you're like, oh, I just want to roll over and put the pillow over my head.
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
dread my day, right?
Absolutely.
And some of those things that have to happen during the course of the day, you can't change. You have to
Mm,
do them for whatever
mm,
reason. But you can change your attitude going into it. And it's so easy to do. close your eyes and put yourself back into a good feeling scenario. Maybe getting together with friends, or a success that you had, or a hike that you took in the mountains, or whatever it is. And just be in that moment. Let your attitude shift, because it will. When you really visualize something, you'll be in a better frame of mind, and all those things on your to-do list don't look that bad.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between taking action because you have to, and inspired action. There's
Yeah.
a huge difference there. And that's one of the tenets of AHARA. How can you, I am not, I was invited to take this workshop from a business coach. And I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I thought, I'm going to go hear what they're saying now. So it'd been a long time since I've been to that kind of workshop. So I go, and it was a sales workshop, and you got to make 100 calls a day, and you're going to get 99 no's, and then you'll finally get the yes. And you got short-term goals and long-term goals. And I'm not dissing any of that, because that structure is really good for some people. But where's the joy? And where is the excitement in that? That's the difference between action and inspired action. If you are a salesperson who is, doing that, and it can get pretty discouraging getting all of that rejection, right?
Yeah.
And this can apply to anybody, any kind of rejection, nobody likes it. But if you think about what you're offering in the terms of, how is that person going to feel when they have it? We always talk about not selling you sell the benefits, right? But I would take that a step further. How does this change your life when you have this widget, or when you do this service, right? That is what people are looking for. And if you don't understand that about yourself, and you don't understand that about people in general, you are missing out on your full potential.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's lots of really insightful and really impactful things in that. And I definitely feel that without the awareness and the clarity of thought, then missing out on our potential and really what we want is so easily done.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm just going to pull up something on my computer here, because I think this is really helpful for people to understand when we talk about full potential. So just bear with me for 1 second, because I want to
Actually, I
bring
might
up
have to do something
my,
at the moment.
okay. Are we pausing?
No, I might have
Okay.
to enable, sorry.
Well, no, I'm not going to post it. I want to
Okay.
talk about it
Okay.
in a
Okay.
way.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, because it can be a little complicated,
Yeah.
and you can tell I like to talk, so I want to make sure that I get it correct in my mind, because my mind is running in 100 directions right now of all these things I would love to share. And I know we don't have time for that, but it's something I call the AHARA shift. And it's a super important way of looking at how we don't get to our full potential, because um, uh, we don't put ourselves in a situation where we can recognize these things. So hold on 1 second, I'm bringing it up here. Well, I thought I was bringing it up here. I should have been prepared for this. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time here looking for what I need to look for, but the AHARA shift is just really something that is a way of looking at, where do we find our potential, right? Where do we find the way to realize, like I think you said earlier, in our conversation before we started, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so when we look at the AHARA shift, it helps us discover, what is it that we are really missing out on? And it turns out that there's quite a bit. So here's what we're open to: what we know ourselves to be our truth, and what other people knows. So this can be in a personal level or a business level. We're working with a bunch of colleagues on a particular project. We know that project because we're both working on it, right? Then there's the area that we're blind to. And this is what other people know, but we don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then there is the unknown area, which we don't know about and other people don't know about it either. This is space exploration, right? This is the stuff that I don't even know what to ask because I don't know, right? And then there's hidden. So these 4 quadrants, the hidden section is what other people don't know, but we know. So when you look at those 4 areas, what we're open to, what we're blind to, what is unknown, and what is hidden, 3/4 of that box, if we put them in a box, are not being utilized.
Wow.
They are
That's amazing.
unknown possibilities. And this is what I mean when I talk about how we are really only functioning in such a small area of our potential.
Yeah.
So with AHARA, this is the shift that we hope to make, that we hope to open, to find those areas that are hidden. And those are things that we know we don't want other people to know. So that is being vulnerable with people. That is, admitting things or asking questions that are hard to ask. The areas that we're blind to and the areas that we just don't know about. That could be research. It could be
Yeah.
whatever. So, like I say, there's so many areas to explore within ourselves and our possibility, our personally and professionally, to really make these quantum leaps into reaching our full potential.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. No, sounds amazing. So we're getting towards the end now.
Yep.
So what I would love to do is to ask you, where's the best place for people to find you and find out about not just AHARA, but everything you do?
Yeah, so they can reach me at robertafernandez.com. I've made that pretty easy. So they can just go to my website. You can email me at robertafernandez.com. So it's that's the email. The website is robertafernandez.com. So super easy to get in touch with me. I work with people all over the world. AHARA is online. So I suppose if it's a little bit trickier being in the UK and the US, but it's all workable, right?
Amazing.
Uh, yeah.
Amazing. And there was a link that you said that people can get access to as well.
Yeah, so the link is kind of long. So I think if you just publish it in
Okay,
below your
lovely.
podcast, but I'll tell you what it is. It is a webinar, about 40 minutes, 45-minute webinar on imposter syndrome and other myths to ditch, the things that we're holding on that keep us small. And it's just wonderful. People really, really like it. And there's a recording in there, a visualization that I do that you can access, the checklist for the myths to ditch, and then an offer for a 30-minute strategy call. So
Oh,
for people
amazing.
that want to
Amazing.
know, yeah,
Okay,
so
fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic.
happy to do that.
So I'll take the link and I'll put that in the show notes. And then I've just got a very last question, which is a recurring question. Hopefully I'll let you know about this. So the recurring question is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, they could
Oh
be
dear.
alive or past, who might you invite?
I'm probably going to throw a wrench into this traditional question
Okay.
because everybody's going to say, famous people.
Mm,
Um, what I know in my 60 years of life, 66 years now, is that we need to spend more time with people that are important to us.
mm,
So the first person that I would always want to have dinner with is my daughter and her family, because those personal connections, and they're my
mm.
reason for everything,
Yeah.
actually. Do I want to pick famous people, successful people's brain? Yes. But it is always family and friends and my colleagues first, because that is my bubble that I live in and that I have to tend to keep my personal awareness there.
Yeah.
Uh, and then after that, I can think about who the bigger people are.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably sounds like a cop out, but truly that's how I
Oh,
feel.
no, no. Somebody said an octopus, so it varies. It varies. And
Oh, that's a really
it
good
wasn't a
answer.
joke, it was serious. So yeah, so there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
And family would be high up there for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
Roberta, this has been wonderful. I alluded
Thanks.
to at the outset, we've had to shrink wrap this into I don't know, an hour conversation. Obviously, there's lots more that we could cover, but obviously time prevents us doing that. So hopefully we can have many more conversations. So thank you very much for your
Would love to.
amazing insights into any number of different things today.
Thanks, Paul. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I
You're
really
very
appreciate
welcome,
it.
very welcome. And if you listen to this or watch this on YouTube, please do subscribe because it really does help us grow the channel, which is a huge objective. And your feedback is most welcome. So keen to hear about things you like and equally things you don't like. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the contact page. And if you know anybody that is really looking to develop their peak performance and become more aware, then definitely please do share this episode. So on to the next time. Take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.